Welcome back to The Big Show, talking to the big stars, and it's always nice to meet someone who's gorgeous and got a great voice, and one of my heroes, Alison Moyet. How are you?
Lovely, thank you very much. Lovely intro.
Have you worked out at this point what's most important? Being very talented, having a great voice, and having great songs?
I would say having great songs and having a work ethic. That's the one you missed out.
Because it is a lot of hard work, and I think people forget that, and especially the X Factor generation think you turn up in September and do an audition and by Christmas you've got a number one. In reality, it doesn't really happen like that, does it?
Well, no, and yet strangely, in some ways it did happen like that for me. If you think, I was playing in punk bands and pub rock bands when I started working with Vince Clarke. He asked me to demo a song with him, which was Only You, and 3 months later we were massive stars together. So strangely enough, that is kind of how it happened. But I think the difference is they imagine that is going to be a consistent trajectory, you know what I mean? And what they don't quite realise is they have a smaller window than the rest of us, and that's small anyway, you know.
Of course, the thing we all know you for is the distinctive voice. Was it always that different?
Yes, I think that's the case. Although you can hear that, you know, especially on this best of collection, you can hear how the voice has changed through the years, you know, and that's to be expected. But what I would say is that given a few more years of singing, is you lose the obvious sounds of your influences, which with a lot of the singers these days, my one criticism would be sometimes you don't know who you're listening to, and because everything is so awash with R&B that everyone's got the same licks and everyone's got the same turns, that it becomes, for me, a little bit wearying. The other thing is I like not to be influenced too much by what's going on now. You know, I think sometimes when you work with certain producers, that can become a bit insidious because they're always talking about, well, this is a hit, let's do that. And it's like, well, on one level, that's pointless because by the time we finish this, that's going to have been last year anyway. And for two, I you know, the greatest records that happen by accident. You know, when Vince and I sat down together to write in Yazoo, we never played each other records. Do you know what I mean? It was what we brought to each other and the amalgam that made it interesting. Not that we were going, let's sound like so-and-so, because you've already got them.
Let's start at the beginning. What were you like as a child, an Essex upbringing, and suddenly you're here today, a big star in London? It's not very far in terms of geography, but it's a long way to come in terms of your life, isn't it?
Well, it really was. You know, I grew up on a council estate in Basildon, which I loved, incidentally, you know, and Basildon was never a town I ever had any ambition to leave. I was really quite happy there, and I wasn't too sorry about the fact that I didn't have many chances in life, because it's what it was like for all of us. But I was top set for everything and left school with 1 O-level. I'm going to tell you, you know, if ADD had been invented, then I would have had it, you know. I wasn't focused, I wasn't hardworking, you know, I was constantly flitting, I was slightly aggressive, I was a bit of a scrapper. I was a product of a French peasant family growing up in a new town, but it was also a very aggressive family, not physically aggressive, but there was always screaming, always crying. And when that's the environment you grow up in, that's the way you learn to communicate. So often I could be shouting and people would be thinking, why are you angry? And I wasn't particularly angry. It's just that this is a table thumping family, that when you put your point across, you make a noise, you know. And it took me a long time to figure out that actually it's not fair on the people around you. It's intimidating, it's tiresome, and it gives people the wrong idea about where you're coming from. So it took me a long time to reel it in. But as a teenager, I think I was too much in your face, really.
What age were you when you woke up one morning and thought, enough banging on the table?
35. I reckon about the last 10 years I've been really chill.
Which doesn't really bode well for the beginning of your career. You must have offended a lot of people then.
Well, in some ways, but then it was also this other kind of funny mixture, because whilst I was a table thumper, you know, I was also brought up to have great respect for my elders and all this kind of stuff. So it was a strange mixture. I was always polite and well mannered, but the thing that I found hardest is that when I was younger and when people were intimidating me, I could always square up to them and give some back, and it created a safe cocoon. When you become famous and you're working class, the worst thing that someone can say to you is you're jumped up, you're up yourself, you know, and so that suddenly takes away this protective layer that you have, till you have to kind of bare your belly and let people kick you and not give anything back. And I think that caused me a problem for a long time, because I just didn't know how to defend myself.
Have you got the balance right now then, where you don't have to bang on the table and upset too many people to get what you want?
It's really easy to imagine that as a woman you're always manipulated. Maybe some women are. I can't particularly say that I was, and I think that the mistakes I made were more to do with the fact that I often took my eye off the ball rather than the fact that someone else was coercing me. You know, the fact of the matter is if you have a choice to make and you don't want to make it because you're being too louche and you hand it to someone else, you can't then cry about the fact that they made a different choice than you would have done. You know, that was the case. But no, I don't think that I don't think that in the business I was too. Actually, I was difficult, yeah. As I've gotten older, I've figured out what makes her opinion better than yours. I know that I'm a decent person. I know that I'm loving and I'm kind and I'm interesting. And if someone doesn't get that, that's fine. It's just it's just what people get, innit?
If you were to start your career again today, it would be so different because there's PRs involved now and people telling you how to dress and how to move and how to talk and walk and what to say. Was there as much of that in your day?
None of it. And you've only got to look at the 80s to figure that. But, you think the first time I went on Top of the Pops, I'd signed a record deal and a publishing deal, and no one had thought to give me an advance. And, of course, I'd been living on, I'd never had more than 15 quid a week. It never occurred to me you could ask for an advance. So when I went on Top of the Pops, I had to go down the local market to get some fabric for a tenner, which my mate round the corner ran up on a sewing machine. It just didn't occur. It just did not occur. Yeah, there was no thoughts of wardrobe or how to present ourselves. I mean, even the first time I went on television, we'd never actually sat in a rehearsal studio and practiced what we were going to do. So the first, there I was with the camera on me, about to sing a song, or should I say in those days, mime it, because that's the way it was with television, thinking, what do I do with my feet? Oh, I don't know, I'll go that way and I'll go that way, Whereas now, every move is completely stage managed, isn't it?
Are you comfortable doing this, talking to people like me, or would you rather the singing be it? Because I know a lot of singers don't like actually talking about themselves. It's all about the music.
I used to not like it because I'd be defensive, because in the early days if someone smiled at me I assumed that meant they liked me, and then I'd sort of like bear too much of my soul, and you'd read it and you think, oh, you've just hammered me, Whereas now, no, like now that I'm just in a chill place, I don't expect, with this we're talking, so you can't twist my words. You know what I mean, unless you edit me like that, So no, it doesn't worry me. And also, there's the other thing is that we're all here to do a job. That neither one person's more important than the other, and it's it's all symbiotic, and it's just get on with it.
Were you born singing? Because you've got the kind of voice that doesn't sound trained. It's so natural and from the heart.
Well, I was born singing as much as any other kid. I didn't grow up in a musical background, although I did take music classes, but that was in oboe, it was strange enough. And, I wasn't allowed to be in the choir for some reason. I was told I couldn't sing, so I couldn't be in the school plays. And, so I never thought of myself as a singer. The reason I became a singer is because I was in punk bands and I had more front than anyone else and a louder voice, But then it was never about singing, I was on the stage singing before I considered I needed a voice.
Was there a point where you can remember, actually, I can do this? When was the point when you thought, I'm quite good at it?
I would say about 15 years ago, that I actually thought, no, I am a good singer. And I'm a good singer because I've stopped trying to emulate other people and understand that it's about communicating, and I'm a good communicator.
It's funny how some things seem to happen for a reason, almost serendipity. Apparently you shot to fame after you took over from Paul McCartney when his mic went down at a charity gig. Is that true?
Well, the funnier is how stories change, because I've heard a few people say that to me, and that's not what happened at all, interestingly. That's the kind of funny thing about history, it's about those kind of Chinese whispers. What in fact happened is that Paul McCartney was doing the what did you call it, the finale, and he'd invited 4 musicians to join him: David Bowie, Bob Geldof, Pete Townsend, and me as the only woman, So as you can imagine, that's a huge, compliment. But what happened is all our mics went down.
So this story then was pointless. This question was totally ridiculous. It'll have to be edited out. I mean, I was trying to make you sound wonderful, and actually the truth is you were as rubbish as everyone else.
Well, no, but what made me feel wonderful is you're talking about David Bowie and Pete Townsend, and Bob Geldof was there, and Paul McCartney and me. That was the thing. When I went to Live Aid, someone had asked me to do a charity gig, which, if I was free, I'd do charity gigs. That's great, Got in the car, they took me somewhere and picked me up in a helicopter. I'm thinking, why are we going in a helicopter? And then they flew us to Wembley Stadium, which I thought we were going to Wembley Arena, which I'd played as solo act many times, And then there I was at the stadium, and then the helicopter door opened, and there's Roger Daltrey standing in front of me, waving at me, Then I was standing on the side of the stage, and Freddie Mercury's blowing me kisses. Do you know what I mean? It's like, there you are, like you say, a girl from Basildon. And when you say stars, I mean, you're often around people on the television, but these are stars. Do you know what I mean? Big, massive, great big stars in this massive, great big arena. That was mental.
So is it afterwards you realised how momentous that day was, or at the time are you able to think, good God, I was just sat opposite someone like Freddie who will be remembered forever?
Well, I kind of knew when I got off the helicopter it was a big thing, but I didn't know before I got on the helicopter. And in fact, funny enough, I mean, I'd sung a duet that night with Paul Young, and I'd actually been asked if I wanted to do a set of my own, and I said, oh, well, I've got a band together at the moment. Do you want to sing with Paul Young? I'll go and sing with Paul Young. So there I was, it's like completely oblivious, and that's another reason why I sang a cover on that show as opposed to on that show, as opposed to doing a song, just because I felt like if you're going to, I felt really uncomfortable about trying to plug your own material. Do you know what I mean? That's why we did a song that we hadn't recorded.
Incredible. All right, let's do some business for you then, Alison. You got this brand new album out, The Very Best Of, and what a treat this is. It's not going to be the end, is it? The Very Best Of doesn't mean no more Alison Moyet.
Oh, no, absolutely. And the fact of the matter is that normally, this kind of project, as much as it's lovely to have your work put out, there's not something that really spikes the interest of an artist. The reason I wanted to be involved, it enabled me to include songs from the later albums, which to my mind is my superior work, and I know it doesn't tie in with your best-selling work, but that in some ways is an irrelevance. You have a time, on top of the sine wave, and that is the material that everyone gets to know,
There must be a point in everybody's career when you wonder, will they still want to hear me?
Oh, absolutely, and also, will I still want to do it? There's all those kind of things, but of course, it has to stop. But for me, there's always been a slight excitement about that. I always wish that I always like to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And there's been so many other things that I've kind of wanted to do, like, poker classes or a sculpture, stuff like that. That's always, I can't do that yet because I'm in the middle of this, So there's always those kind of things that when it stops, there's going to be a slight relief.
Alison Moyet, true pleasure meeting you. The new album's in the stores now. It's got all your greatest hits on. And thank you for the memories, and thank you for being part of my show every day.
Thank you very much, and well, thank you for having me, including me.